Netflix, or any streaming service for that matter, is so much more than just entertainment. When we think about gaining fluency and learning to speak Spanish, these broadcast shows on Netflix represent, if you look at them in Spanish with Spanish subtitles, they represent what we're trying to achieve. It's filled with rich conversation. And the trick here is not just simply watch these movies, but to look at it as a source of content for later study that we can incorporate into our journey of gaining fluency. And that is what we'll discuss in today's video. My name is Scott Bryant, and I've always got a movie running on Netflix that I'm capturing content for later study. And again, I'm not watching it thinking that I'm going to naturally learn how to speak Spanish by exposing myself to others that speak Spanish. No. I'm using it as a tool to identify interesting content, to capture that content, to store that content, and then later study that content. There's an entire life cycle process that goes through from watching these movies and turning it into content for later study. And that is what we're going to discuss from beginning to end in today's video. So let's jump in right now. So let me level set on a couple of things before we get started. First off is there's a process to select the right movies. And I have another video that goes into in depth about my thinking about how to do that. Not all these movies are created equal. You got to find good content that you want to watch. So let's also think about the output of this activity, which is, again, I'm described it as content for later study. Specifically what that means, particularly with my methodology called the Calistan method, it's content for what I call translation practice. That's a pillar 2 activity. We have 4 pillars. We start with studying the language. Pillar 2 is translation practice. Pillar 3 is conversation practice, and pillar 4 is speaking with others. And all of these pieces are required to get you to the point of gaining fluency. The purpose of watching these movies is to capture content for translation practice, that pillar 2 activity. It's really after you have gained some knowledge of the language and you're starting your process of learning to speak, you're doing it via translation. So you're always looking for phrase in English and its translated version in Spanish. There's a lot of videos I've got about that process of translation practice, but this is the source and the best source for that. You're seeing dialogue, you're getting to select which dialogue you capture. Ultimately, it becomes the basis of what you study in this translation practice. So you'll see it over and over again the weeks to come. So that is the purpose. That's why we're going through this process. So that's just level setting on what we're going to do with all this. Now let's get into what that process looks like. This process starts with what I would call capturing content. What does that look like? I'm typically sitting down in front of a television and I have 2 things. I have a remote control and I have my telephone with my translation app at the ready, okay? So what I do is I tee up the movie and it starts. Again, I'm talking about movies that are broadcast originally in English that have been translated and you're seeing dubbed in Spanish. So they're speaking Spanish, I'm hearing the Spanish, and I'm seeing a Spanish subtitle below that. I watch the movie and I look for content that's interesting, that's at my level, that is something that maybe I understand it, maybe I understand most of it, a little of it. There's something that's interesting to me. I hit a pause button on my remote. I see the subtitle on the screen. I then pick up my telephone and with the translation app, I click go. I state that phrase in Spanish into my translation app, right? As I say it in Spanish, it then translates it to English. So I have a Spanish and an English version of that phrase. It forces me to speak it correctly. Sometimes I don't get it right out of the bat. if you don't speak it and pronounce it correctly, this translation app won't work. So it kind of forces a little discipline of reading it. You might have to do it several times. That's cool. You're learning. It goes in. And then once that's there, I have the original Spanish thing that I stated out loud. It's equivalent in English. I hit save. There's a way to save these translations. I have a whole nother video on the translation app, how to use it. But you save these things. Boom. And then I hit go. And I unpause the screen and go and proceed in the movie until I find another phrase of interest. I hit pause and I repeat exactly that process. This is how I go through a movie capturing content. It is a long process. A movie that is 90 minutes in length might end up taking me several days to get through in short increments. I'll do it as long as I enjoy doing it. In total, a 2-hour movie might take me 5 hours to get through. It all depends. It depends how much content I'm capturing from the movie, how interesting the movie is, how relevant. The longer it takes to get through it probably means I'm capturing a lot of really cool, interesting content. But that's what I do as I go through it. I'm continually pausing the button, seeing a phrase, speaking that phrase in Spanish, seeing it translated before my eyes, ensuring that that looks good, and saving it. And then when I get through a movie, I might have anywhere from 50 to 100 to even more phrases that are in English and in Spanish. And I've seen them. I've validated that there's of interest and relevant at my level, and it's awesome. So that's the first step. So now we've got the content captured. How do we turn that into study material? And what does it look like to turn this into study material? Well, again, so you start, the content you captured is in this translation app. So you now have a list of, let's call it 50, 100 different translations in English and in Spanish that are residing within the memory of the translation app. That I need to then put into my flashcard application. I simply have a flashcard application. The one I use is called Anki, A-N-K-I. There's other videos I have on this. But that is the platform I use to do my translation practice study. So the point here is I want to take what's in the translation app and move it into my flashcard application. And how do I do that? I just go through when I have a few minutes. It's a brain dead activity. There's some labor involved. It's pretty quick and simple. I basically pull up every one of those translations one by one, and I will see the English and then the Spanish version. I take and I do a little copy of the English phrase. I paste it into the front side of a flashcard, if you will. It's where we're going to start with the translation. And I copy the Spanish version and put it on the back of the flashcard application. That's what we're going to be guessing when we study. And then I come back to the translation app and I delete that card because it's gone. It's now moved. It's in its rightful location where I can study it. I go to the next one. Boom. Cut, paste, delete. Cut, paste, delete. I go through every single one of these. And look, I do it in little batches. I got 10 minutes here. I'll push over 25. It's a quick process. It takes no time at all. And then you have a rich source of content for study at a later time. That is the process. That's how you move it over. You know, it's a batch process. It happens quickly. And again, once they're moved over, everything's gone from the translation app, and now it's in its new location ready for study. Now let's talk about study and the benefit of this. This is why we're watching these movies, to create content, interesting content for later study. Why is this so helpful and powerful? First off, it's real deal. It's a real conversation with real people that was translated from English to Spanish professionally. You're trying to recall what you saw and heard in the movie. There's so much power to that. You could translate anything. You could do translation practice with random sentences from any source. Cool, fine, that works. I do it. I pull stuff from dictionary.com and study them. That has no meaning. What's really cool about these movies is they have meaning. When you hear this phrase in English and then you translate it to Spanish, you recall what happened in the movie. I often recall the exact scene and the actor stating that phrase. And they might have been passionate, maybe they're not, whatever. But that connection visually in the movie and the emotion, it just makes it easier to remember. And again, I selected this. This is a phrase I thought was cool that I wanted to have in my bag, my repertoire of things I could speak. So it's meaningful to me. It's from a movie that I chose, that's meaningful to me. Again, this so aligns with my thinking and methodology for learning the language. It's fun. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, people watch movies in English and later jokingly state lines from these movies in English. Well, you're kind of doing the same thing here, only you're doing it in Spanish. And you're learning the language in the process. So super, super, super powerful and helpful and interesting and checks all the boxes in my book. Bueno, en conclusión, sí, eso tarda un montón de tiempo. Del cabo a rabo puede tardar como 5 horas o más de hacer solo una película, pero totalmente vale la pena. It's so worthwhile. Yeah, it takes a long time. It can take 5 hours to get through a movie, but that's why it works. You're investing in something that's real, that's meaningful, that's personalized, that you're going to remember. For me, it's joyous because it combines entertainment, enjoyment with learning. It's become an integral way that I'm continually upping my game. And now I look at subtitles at some things and it's too easy. So I get a little more selective, but inevitably, I don't care what your level, you're going to find stuff you don't know. You are. And it's there. And I just can't think of a better platform or piece of this puzzle to get you to fluency. So again, hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly have enjoyed creating it. Like and subscribe, por favor. Eso me ayuda un montón para escupir este método y esas ideas. Bueno, entonces gracias por todo. Nos vemos. Adiós.